You are watching The New American Media.
Follow thenewamericanmedia.com on Twitter at American_media_.
All right, so we're back with Marc Clair from Lions of Liberty and Blake the Eccentric Walley from freedomizerradio.com and eccentricperspective.com. All right, gentlemen, this is one that Mark, you had a few thoughts on. This is from Reuters. Iran repelled an unidentified aircraft violating its airspace, it said on Friday, after Washington reported a U.S. surveillance drone was shot at by Iranian warplanes last week. Defense Minister Brigadier General Ahmed Vahidi appeared to be referring to the U.S. drone, which the Pentagon said had not entered Iranian territory. The incident has underlined the risk of U.S.-Iranian tensions escalating into a military clash. So you were worried about the neocons and all the Bush people getting Romney into a war with Iran, but it looks like it doesn't matter which of the two puppets are in office. It looks like there's a little bit of war games going on. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, we've had carriers in the Gulf for months now. They sent a couple of their big boys out there, and it's Obama has definitely had kind of a two sides of his mouth thing here. I think in some ways he has kind of resisted calls from the Israeli prime minister and from the more neocon elements of our government, which is to say most of it, really, for pushing for direct war. At the same time, he's they're playing with fire. They're sending carriers out there. They're imposing crippling sanctions, on the population, crippling economic sanctions. I was just reading recently how inflation is just skyrocketing in Iran since we've imposed sanctions on their central bank. It's very hard for outside businesses to do business with Iran, and that also, sanctions just punish people, so it just prevents people from interacting and prevents people from getting things they need, like food and medicine and all sorts of things. So, I mean, either way, whether it's a direct confrontation or not, we are in a war with Iran. I don't want to say we. I need to get myself out of that. It's kind of how we were brought up. We were raised to call the government we. That's one of my resolutions, I guess, is to try to stop saying we, because it's not we, it's them, it's the government, it's the people in power. They don't represent me. But yeah, I found this hoopla very interesting. Clearly we're provoking Iran in many different ways. Clearly we have little robots flying in their airspace. They shot one down there a few months ago. We have them flying around their airspace. So I mean, I think if China had a bunch of aircrafts off of our coast and was kind of sending little drones all over the place, we probably would have fired at a few by now, and then we'd be calling for their heads and all this stuff. So I think it's a little bit hypocritical, but I do find it funny. I have to read this paragraph. I was just browsing this article by Glenn Greenwald. He used to write for Salon, and now he's with The Guardian, and he's really good. He's considered a progressive, but he's really good on civil liberties, on the war. He hammers the Democrats just as hard as Republicans. So I have to read this one paragraph. He says, "First things first, let us pause for a moment to extend our thoughts and prayers to this U.S. drone. Although it was not physically injured, being shot at by the Iranians, while it was doing nothing other than peacefully minding its own business, must have been a very traumatic experience. I think I speak on behalf of everyone, regardless of political views, when I say that we all wish this brave hero a speedy recovery and hope it is back in full health soon, protecting our freedom." I think that sums it up. How he's specifically addressing CNN's coverage of this. How it's almost like outrage at this event, at this firing on this robot. Meanwhile, you don't even hear about the fact that our robot drones are in all sorts of countries killing actual human beings every single day. Not a peep about that, but we're really concerned that this drone, which wasn't even hit by anything, might have been fired at by a country that we're kind of messing with, to put it one way.
Well, Blake, let me ask you about that, because you and I we talk about Benjamin Netanyahu, who I believe your phrase is how do you say it? The most danger. I'm going to let you say it, but this whole Iranian Israeli conflict and all of this escalating war games and drones, you have some pretty strong opinions on this as well.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Mark said. Except just to expand on that, I think Netanyahu is one of the maybe the worst leader on the planet. I mean, there's some bad ones. He's been crying for war for 20 years with Iran. How they've been they're almost about to get a nuclear weapon. Blah blah blah. He's a really dangerous warmonger, in my opinion, and just as bad as Ahmadinejad or whatever his name is in Iran, in my view. And yes, that would have been a really awful thing with Romney, and I agree that that was a silver lining. Yes, Romney and Netanyahu, or Bibi, they've been really close for probably 30 years or more, and so they were. And of course, he's got 17 of 24 of his foreign policy advisors were from the Bush-Cheney administration. He was also talking about, really increasing the war machine money. So it was pretty clear that we were going to be into war with Iran, almost guaranteed if Romney got in there. And Netanyahu needs to be kept in check. War is the last thing we need, and we got one of our expensive little toys shot down, but nobody got hurt. We shouldn't be messing around and trying to fly drones over their airspace or anywhere near it. I mean, we can only imagine what would happen if Iran or other countries were, flying drones around our airspace. I mean, you just don't go around doing stuff like that. So we're provoking them and putting sanctions on them and surrounding their country with military bases and putting, ships in the Strait of Hormuz and just poking them with a stick and just daring them to do something so we have an excuse to jump into war. I mean, things were pretty
It's kind of like
heavy.
if some pesky neighbor I had that was been messing with me and kind of threatening my girlfriend and my dog and me, set up a video camera across the street, not technically on my property, but on a pole, and set up a camera, and I took a pea shooter and tried to shoot at it but missed, and then that justified him being way outraged and trying to organize the community to come burn my house down.
Well, let me say though too, I've clashed with Blake on this a couple of times. I said, now while Netanyahu may have been out there, for better part of 2 decades trying to get somebody to erase Iran and stop them from doing what they're doing, if I had a neighbor that was threatening to wipe the stinking corpse of the Engelman off the face of the earth, if I'd been threatened for the better part of 2 decades by some crazy neighbor, I might start getting a little rambunctious myself. I might start to get that fight or flight syndrome where I need to go stop this before he brings it over here because he's sure as hell threatened me enough. So I'll give you both a chance to react to that comment. Blake, you first.
Well, I'm still questioning that one comment, that one quote. It was in another language. I don't know if it was actually translated that way. Certainly, they haven't attacked anybody for I don't know how long. Is it hundreds of years or 100 years?
I think the movie
Iran?
300, that story
300?
was the last time.
Yeah, so I mean,
Sure.
I don't know exactly to what extent that's true, or if they're not the aggressor. Israel seems to me to always be the aggressor over there, as wacky and fundamentalist as the leadership in Iran is. I actually think the leadership in Israel is more dangerous.
And your reaction to it, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I, whether or not that is a proper translation of that wipe off the map, I believe he was referring to the concept of Zionism in the sense of, an aggressive expansion of land around the area and taking over Arab part. But whether or not that's the case is kind of irrelevant because we're talking about this one dude, Ahmadinejad, who's going to be out of office soon, who's the 13th most powerful person in Iran. The president has very little power there, very little support. We had this George Bush guy who said a bunch of crazy stuff too. I don't think that should justify murdering a bunch of people in our country for it. So that's basically kind of what that argument is there. It's war punishes the people. That's who dies. It's not that's not something that making a wacky off the cuff comment really I think justifies. And like I said, Israel's I'm not going to say the only. All those countries in that area have aggressed upon each other. Egypt, Syria, Lebanon. It's a complicated history to get into, but throughout all of that history, you haven't seen Iran invade any country. You've seen them get invaded by by Iraq through our funding, but you haven't actually seen them. Probably the least aggressive country in that, at least with when we're talking about direct military confrontation in that region.
We are talking with. Go ahead.
And I also want to say, I mean, I think it's just absolutely nuts and doesn't make any sense whatsoever. For Netanyahu's reasoning is that, if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, like they're just immediately gonna launch it over at Israel. I mean, they'd be committing suicide. It'd be ridiculous to think that one weapon. I mean, it's a big program. They'd have to test. They'd have to do some testing. It's a long process of doing a nuclear program, and the idea that they're just going to get one or two nukes or something and just immediately go after Israel just because they're so insane that they just want to just wipe out Israel even at the cost of themselves, because every other country in the world would come after Iran, and they know that. So I don't think that makes any sense. So I don't take those threats that seriously, or whatever Ahmadinejad said, and I think Netanyahu is just an absolute warmonger and a dangerous guy.
We are talking with Blake the Eccentric Walley. You can find him on Twitter at Eccentric99, and he does his live show on freedomizerradio.com every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, noon to 1:30 p.m. Pacific. Check him out. And we are also talking with Marc Clair from lionsofliberty.com. Go ahead and take a look at it. It is one of the most influential libertarian websites. Go take a look at that. I want to just get a brief station identification break in here, and we'll be back with our final segment, but I just wanted to bring this up. Hurricane Sandy price gouging. This is an interesting one here, because it kind of gets to the root of how much government intervention makes sense, what is fair, what is supply and demand, what is fascism, what is right, what is wrong, what is morally. This raises a few interesting questions. New Jersey has filed lawsuits over alleged price gouging stemming from Hurricane Sandy. So we'll talk about that on the other side when we get back. My name is Brian Engelman. This is Agree to Disagree here on thenewamericanmedia.com. Be sure that you go on to Facebook.com and do a quick search for The New American Media and like our page, because we like it when you do that.